Welcome back to Absolutely Marvel and DC. My name is Benny, that is Dylan, and that is Sal. And with a lack of shows and movies going on right now until Batman, we decided to have a few fun weekly discussions. And this one I want to ask you, do we need multiple villains in superhero movies? And we've got examples to go in both directions. Batman 89, one villain. Batman The Dark Knight Returns, that only had one in the first one, right? The very first one?
Oh, wait.
Who?
Batman
Scarecrow.
Begins?
No, he had Ra's al Ghul.
Batman Begins.
Yeah, Batman Begins. He had Ra's al Ghul and Scarecrow.
And
Never
Scarecrow.
mind.
Yeah.
There's a theming where these movies feel like they need to have multiple villains or antagonists in some way. And Marvel's not obscure from it. You just all remember the single villains. They normally have some B-tier villain.
Yeah, there's always a main villain and a sub-villain.
Yeah.
The other the thing about Marvel too is like all their characters are so interconnected. Like the one that immediately came to mind to me is like, you know, the first Captain America movie, Red Skull's the villain, but also Zola's there, and he is another huge Captain America villain.
Spider-Man: Homecoming, his main villain is Vulture, but also the Prowler, the Shocker, the Tinkerer, like everybody's in that movie.
Right. They just kind of throw them in. They don't always get a big role, but they're normally there. Mm-hmm. Which one was the one where it opens with Captain America fighting Crossbones on a boat with Black Widow?
No, it was Batroc the Leaper.
Oh yeah, Batroc the Leaper.
It was Winter Soldier. Yeah, which is great, but like, yeah, no. I mean, I think Civil War isn't the main villain just Zemo.
Yes,
and Civil War,
but only for like the third act.
Right, exactly. Like each act has another villain. Like the main, like there's a villain that's Crossbones, and then it's Iron Man, and then it's Zemo. Yeah, and then it's Bucky, kind of. Like, yeah, the Marvel movies are like, it doesn't really follow that formula specifically, but if you go with the origins, like look at Incredible Hulk. Remember that one? That's just, that's Abomination is pretty much the villain, but also Ross.
Yep,
right.
Yep. If you go to the first, what was the first Iron Man villain?
The first Iron Man villain was, of course, Ironmonger, but also not the Mandarin. The leader of the Ten Rings. Remember, he was the villain of the first act. Then Ironmonger takes over.
Oh, yeah, because then they kind of bring that back for the sequel where it turns out it's not him, but that whole thing.
Yeah, but Iron Man 2, Justin Hammer and Whiplash. Iron Man 3, it's Killian and the botanist girl. I don't know. I mean, like, the Mandarin.
But this all started with this. I feel like this kind of started all the way back with Batman Returns, where they were like Catwoman and Penguin.
Yeah.
And then in Batman Forever, it was Two-Face and Mr. Freeze.
Riddler,
that's right. And then Mr. Freeze, Poison Ivy, and Bane.
But Bane was basically just a henchman in that movie. but Bane's in there. Yeah.
X-Men movies do the same thing. They're like, it's Magneto and all his villains.
Yeah. And villains they're never going to do anything with.
I think that's a symptom of you know, studios starting to realize that people will see movies like the amount of names you have in your movie is like, you know, it goes up along with the amount of people that will see your movie.
Look at every animated movie where it's like you see a trailer for an animated movie and then like at the end they're just like name, and I'm like, I don't care about these names.
All these people you know. Mm-hmm.
I don't care.
Chris Pratt is Mario.
Yeah.
Why?
Right? Why? Guess what? Seth Rogen as the guy who laughs like Seth Rogen in this movie. Yeah. So there's a lot of I think that they still haven't gotten away from it. Although you pointed out, Benny, like Dark Knight was like the closest thing where it's like it's Joker, and then in the third like Two-Face.
That almost feels like someone went to Christopher Nolan, but you can do whatever you want. But the rules are two villains. You have to.
Because, like, you know, he becomes Two-Face in the third act and then dies in the third act. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I remember seeing that movie and being like, I'm going to forgive this because, you know what? The third movie with Two-Face is going to be great. And then they're like, oh, he's dead. And I'm like,
hold on. Harvey Dent is in Batman 89.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is.
But he's not a villain yet.
He's not a villain, but he's in there. And so I think, like, they were starting to think of it even back then.
I think somebody put them in the script. I remember Billy D. Williams was the one who read the comics and was like, "Oh, I'll be Harvey Dent."
Right. I'll take it.
Yeah.
It goes almost all the way back to like Superman 78 or 79,
yeah, 78.
78, where it's like it's General Zod and these two random General Zod henchmen. Like,
these two goobers.
Yeah, but the first one is just Lex.
That's true. Yeah. It's weird the way they choose to do that because it almost feels like a mandate that they have to put in multiple villains. But the question I wanted to ask you guys today is, does that improve or hinder the movies? Let's go all the way back to The Winter Soldier. If they cut out the opening scene or just made it not Batroc It's just Captain America on a boat stopping a terrorist. Would that have improved or hindered the movie? Like, did we need Batroc?
At that point, I like the fact that Batroc's in it now. Like, all right, Batroc! Like, use them. I think this is an expansive universe with a ton of characters. Use those characters. Because here's the thing. You're not going to make Captain America 5 Revenge of Batroc the Leaper. You know, so if you're not going to use him as a main villain, use him as a sub-villain or as a temple guardian of some kind.
I think, like, you know, it depends heavily on the specificity of it. Like, with Batroc specifically, like, they're obviously the tone of their Captain America movies. We're never actually going to get the Batroc from the comics. So, sure, use him. Why not? Otherwise, it's just, like, a boring, nameless guy. And I think that just informs, like, just visually speaking, like, if he wasn't Batroc the Leaper, he probably wouldn't have leaped around and kicked Captain America as much. He wouldn't have had like a purple and yellow like bodysuit on.
Yeah.
See, I think Marvel's doing a better job of doing that, where it's like, okay, you're gonna have this minor fight over here, because I just realized to this day, WB has kept the multiple villain mandate.
Yeah.
Even look at Batman v Superman. It's Lex. It's Doomsday. It's the body of Zod. It's you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, like, if you look at Justice League, it's like, it's Steppenwolf, all the parademons.
Like
we're going to put a Deathstroke at the ending. We're going to...
I think that's, you know...
That's all I've set up, but yeah.
And with movies like that, like team-up movies or movies with multiple heroes in them, I give it more of a pass because that kind of makes more sense. Where,
but
like,
Wonder Woman 84, Max Lord and... and Cheetah.
Cheetah. Which is... Okay, for the record, Max Lord and Cheetah still to this day doesn't make sense in that team-up. Like,
No.
They don't
she
team
made
up,
a
do they?
wish.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
nothing
She did,
about that
yeah.
movie makes sense.
No, that
Well,
was,
her wish is to be half cat. Oh, now you'll guard me. Like, what?
yeah, no, that movie, let's not talk about that movie.
You brought it up.
I did, but as an example. We don't have to
Aquaman
analyze
has
it.
Aquaman has Orm in all the kingdoms. Like, he's fighting all those villains.
He's got Orm's the main villain, but also Black Manta's in it, and also the trench monster.
The trench is in it, and the opposing kingdoms for the Lord of the Rings fight.
Right?
It's like, there's just so much going on. And honestly, for me, whenever I see movies that just keep throwing more and more villains in, it just feels more and more bloated. It just feels like they're bloating the movie. When you look something like Batman 89, it's just clean cut. It's the Joker.
Yeah.
It's the Joker. And we allude to things, we have fun Easter eggs, but it's the Joker.
Right. Yeah, no, and it allows you to really like parallel. This is the villain. This is the hero. Here's how they complement each other. Here's how they contrast each other. Like, watch as they rise to. You know, that actually was a trope for a little while. Was just like there's the hero and the villain and the villain and the hero have dueling origin stories up until they converge.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's like a, you know, if you want to make an actual movie about characters who change and have arcs, it's a lot harder to do that when you have, you know, like 18 different arcs to fulfill rather than 2. And I think that's like Marvel's figured that out to an extent where obviously, like, going back to Batroc, like, Batroc the Leaper in Winter Soldier doesn't have an arc. He's just a fun visual. And I think that's little fans of Batroc may be pissed that they don't get more of Batroc, even though eventually they did. But that's not, you know, that's not the point. Like, it's just about, like you said, Sal, like, there's this toy box full of things that we can pull from. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to, especially when it's just going to be like a boring, like, people complain about MCU movies being so gray and not very visually interesting all the time. Imagine if they took out all of the comic book references. That would be awful.
Yeah,
I do think the MCU has done a good job, but the mandate does still be like, you have to have multiple villains. But I think the MCU does a good job of being like, this is who we're going to develop. This is the hero we're going to develop. If you want to throw other people in, that's fine, but don't give them backstories, which I do think is one of the things that would bloat classic superhero movies. They'd be like, we got 3 villains. Yeah. And they all need an origin. Like,
right, and it's a shame because when you do that, you do, like, someone has to be brought, like, down, or somebody has to, like, go by the wayside. I mean, look at what happened in Black Widow when they were like, and we're gonna put Taskmaster in there. And
that's like, a bad example of Marvel.
It's a really bad example of Marvel being like, we got to have 2 villains. Like,
that's a great example of them doing it wrong, though, because they really had Taskmaster, the Widow organization. Taskmaster could have been 100% yanked out and used for something else, and that movie would have flowed fine.
You could have just replaced Taskmaster,
You just put
Which is a
one of the
shame
widows.
because,
Just that's
like
it.
people could argue the same thing about us like talking about Batroc in that way, but like I said earlier, Batroc in the comics doesn't fit the tone of the Captain America movies that we got. But Taskmaster, absolutely, you could like comic accurate Taskmaster, you could 100% do stuff with in the MCU.
If you wanted to change his costume so it's not a skull, that's fine. Because I didn't think there was a problem with the costume. It was the problem that they didn't do Taskmaster.
It's just
that was my issue. I had no problem with them changing it to a woman or even the costume if she had still acted like Taskmaster. Like that's what I wanted. I didn't want a mute character who's using computer things to analyze and like that wasn't. Taskmaster's a wisecracking guy that runs half the time because he's like, oh shit, like.
Well, and the idea of like a supervillain school is like
Fett.
such a cool idea. Like, what a cool idea to use. And you know what? Like, thanks to Hawkeye, we've established like legacy suit things. Like, oh, someone else can get the suit and be fun Taskmaster. And make a name for themselves if you want to do that, which I hope they do because that was a disappointment. But like, look at Ghost. Ghost is one of I think Walton Goggins is a villain. I don't remember who the hell the villains are in Ant-Man 2, but I do remember Ghost, and they changed her up, and I
like that change. I actually like the
Ghost like tragic is like I was like whatever, it's fine.
Ghost is like that's one where like I saw Ghost. This was back when I was still watching trailers. I saw Ghost in the trailer of Ant-Man 2, and I was like, "What are they doing, Ghost?"
Right? Ghost. And because like what villain are you gonna use for Ant-Man? They literally invented one. They're like, a Yellow Jacket.
And that's
Ant-Man doesn't have villains. People don't realize that Ant-Man doesn't normally have villains because originally
is himself
Ultron. Like
originally it was Ultron. It was Ultron, and then he was just on the Avengers, so he did Avengers villains. And then when Scott Lang took over, Dylan put it best. The story was he's his own worst enemy. He doesn't know what he's doing, but he's a superhero.
Scott Lang and Hank
Eric
Pym
O'Grady,
both.
Hank Pym, they're all their own.
They're all dealing with
villains.
their own shit.
Yeah. Ant-Man is secondary. They're like, oh my god, my life. Also, I'm Ant-Man. But these villains, man, it's nuts.
How have we not brought up Spider-Man 3?
Oh yeah, that Spider-Man 3 is the most Joel Schumacherian superhero movie of that time.
There was 3 villains in that. Is Sandman, Venom, and Harry. And they wanted to develop all 3.
Yeah, they're all
No one just
underdeveloped.
showed up. One just showed up.
Well, I love how they were like, you could tell everyone involved in that, someone involved in that movie had a villain. It was like Sam Raimi's like, I set up Harry, and I want to use Sandman. And then Avi Arad is like, and Venom.
Venom.
And it's
Which
like,
you
all
can
right,
tell because Sandman has a backstory. Venom
I
falls
almost
from
feel
space.
out of nowhere.
I feel like with the Venom thing, it was somebody in the office. This discussion had to be had. So we had Spider-Man 1, and he fought Green Goblin. We had Spider-Man 2, he had Doc Ock, and who was the other villain? There was someone else.
Was it?
Was it?
It was just Doc Ock.
Just Doc
Okay.
Ock.
I could have sworn there was a secondary, but okay. So Green
Harry
Goblin.
kind of, but that was just
That's it. That is
Mysterio,
very
if
running back.
you want to believe Spider-Man 4 exists.
Right.
But anyway, and then Spider-Man 3, someone in the office was like, well, we didn't really double down on 2 villains for 2. We had Harry and Doc Ock, but Spider-Man 3 needs 3 villains. It's in the name.
It's in the name.
How about Amazing Spider-Man 2?
Oh, God. That one was just Gobby and Electro, yeah.
Yeah, no, but they set up. They also had Rhino as the stinger.
Oh, yeah, Rhino.
And then they set up all the other villains. Like, by the
God.
way, I'm making Vulture and Doc Ock and
Yeah. And Venom. I mean,
I think
somebody else.
obviously another good example of Marvel doing this right is No Way Home, just following up on the Spider-Man stuff, where these are villains that we already have, pre-existing knowledge for and of, but also you don't need it. Like, they spend time on Green Goblin, because that's the one that you need to know about.
Spend time on, yeah.
And after that, it's like, you get it. They're villains.
Right.
Who cares?
Well,
what you know what I liked about that actually?
Too. Yeah.
They set up the new motivation, and if you remember, they actually had a scene explaining their origins.
Yeah.
But they also linked you directly to the Toby or the Andrew Garfield by later on having them talk directly to them. So you would know where to get the full story. But in the apartment, they actually had a discussion. How did you turn into Sandman? Super Collider. Oh, well, you should watch out where you fall.
I think like the origins that matter here are how they got to the MCU, and the important part there is like it doesn't feel bloated because it's all through dialogue and it's spread out over the course of that whole sequence of Peter capturing them and sending them to that weird prison. That is where all that dialogue happens. Where slowly over time it's like, oh, they all realize we got here right before we die. So that's the origin of these characters for the sake of No Way Home. If you want their actual stuff, they talk about it later, but also there's movies of that.
Yeah, go watch that.
Right, and if you are watching No Way Home and you've never seen the other Spider-Man, they do a great job of establishing their origin quickly. And then once the other Spider-Men show up, which now that's easily searchable if you really want to know, Toby talks to, Green Goblin. Andrew Garfield talks to, Sandman was Toby. Electro. But you have the connection. So you can be like, oh, that's Spider-Man. So that is where I can find this kind of a situation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, No Way Home is kind of unprecedented. Like, there aren't many superhero movie analogs to really compare it to. So it's like, but they do it nicely, where you're like, I get it. Okay, no one's confused. And they had the benefit of using the biggest superhero movies ever made as their tent poles, where it's like, well, you'd need to watch Spider-Man 2 to understand what happens with Doc Ock, but you did.
Yeah, you have.
And I don't need to, and don't like devil's advocate me. You saw it. Like maybe you didn't see Amazing Spider-Man 2. Maybe. Probably not. But like.
So I want to add into this one last discussion because it's coming out next week. Okay. Yeah. Or it actually comes out this week some point.
Right.
This video will probably go live right when the movie's going live. The Batman. They're doing double villains again. Riddler and Penguin.
Yeah.
And then they're throwing in crime bosses because we have already got confirmed of a Carmine Falcone and stuff like that.
Catwoman in there too?
Catwoman's in it, but I think she's like an anti. Catwoman is so far beyond supervillain at this point. Like, I think they're playing Catwoman up as character. Like she is a character in the movie as well. Like, she's not a villain. She's just there. She's like
I remember like
chaotic neutral.
This is coming from someone who hasn't seen any of the trailers and has barely seen any like promotional marketing. But I remember. Back early when this movie was being talked about and who was going to be in it, people were talking about Hush a lot. Yes. And Hush is a book that has everyone
all the villains.
In it.
Yeah.
Right, but the theming behind Hush is they all happen one at a time. Like they don't happen all at once. Batman's not fighting every single one of them at the exact same time.
No, but there could be a scene where Batman is in Arkham Asylum and all the villains are already there.
Mm-hmm. No. Which we're at this weird, like, really cool point in I think like pop culture where there's been enough of these movies made and people have like, even if they haven't read comics, like I remember back before I read comics, I would spend hours as like a 11-year-old looking up like, ooh, who's this character? And I would go to like wikis and I would learn about this stuff. So like inevitably when a character would show up in a movie, I would have some knowledge of it, and you don't really have to explain it. And if you don't know what's going on, hopefully it doesn't matter.
Right. It's just kind of cool. With the Batman, I think it's going to be more like those Spider-Man movies where it's like, here are your primary villains, but also the larger Batman universe is here, and we're not going to shy away from it. Like we did cast these fun tier villains that could have their own movie, but they probably won't.
Well, I think what they're doing, and this is entirely speculation because I have not seen it, is Riddler's the villain.
Right.
But I think there's the mob boss fight going on with Penguin and Carmine at the same time, like Long Halloween, where he kind of dealt with this sub-level stuff while there was this overarching kind of mystery happening at the same time.
Well, and isn't Penguin getting his own show?
Is he? Yes. It's right here.
Like, he's getting, like, literally they're going to make an HBO Max spin-off series about Colin Farrell's version of Penguin, and it's like...
Man, every movie gets one of those now.
Yeah, I'm like, don't ask me to cover that, because I'm not watching a Penguin show.
You don't want to watch the Penguin show? We'll watch it.
Not unless it's the Penguin from Gotham, because that actor was amazing.
Right, it's not that one. It's
that guy was great. I do want to do
goober.
one last caveat here, just because the only time we're probably going to have everyone talk about this. You know, we made that video talking about how they didn't have much marketing, and they've really ramped it up over the last week or two. There was somebody that left a comment of, I hope you guys make a follow-up video to that, to this, because now there's so much marketing. Here's your follow-up. Yes, there's a lot more marketing now.
Yeah, it really blew up.
I bought the Batman
Wasn't there a month
pizza,
ago?
so clearly it's working.
You bought the pizza. You bought the Bat Zone. Yeah.
Oh, I got to get that now.
Don't. It looks horrible.
It's not good. I'm gonna eat the other half of it today.
No, throw it away. Don't eat that.
You know what I had
can't
last night?
waste
Pizza
money.
Hut stuffed crust pizza. Because we had DiGiorno stuffed crust, and we were like, I wonder how it compares to Pizza Hut stuffed crust. It tastes the same.
Checks out.
That checks out. Yeah, that tracks.
But all right, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this week's video or this week's weekly discussion video. We're doing quite a few of these right now. Give us some ideas down below, or just talk to us about what you think about the villain situation. Should they always have multiple? Do you like what the MCU is doing with the multiple, or do you prefer the classic Batman Forever? All the villains have stories, and they've all got to be interlinked in some way.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I have my own plans, but Dylan, you also have great ideas, and there's Batman Sal.
Yeah, let's fight him.
All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this. We'll see you next time right here at the Absolute Armada. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell.